Welcome back. Joining me now is Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey. Senator Booker, welcome back to Meet the Press. And I know on the issue of guns, I think nobody has a more aggressive plan to try to tackle it than you. But I want to set the policy prescriptions aside for a minute and just simply, how do you assess of what we're going through in the last 24 hours, what we've seen, particularly in El Paso, sir?
Obviously, we all are grieving for the victims, for their families, and for the people who are going to have very painful, long roads of recovery from gun violence. I just want to speak with moral clarity right now because I worry that we're having conversations that don't just focus on an understanding that we are all responsible to each other in this country. We have moral bonds and fabric of our country. We have a president of the United States who is particularly responsible. I, in my faith, have this idea that you reap what you sow, and he is sowing seeds of hatred in our country, and this harvest of hate violence that we're seeing right now lies at his feet. When you have the president from the highest moral office in our land talking about invasions and infestations and shithole countries, the kind of things that come out of his mouth that so harm the moral fabric of our nation, he is responsible. He's responsible when he has taken no action whatsoever to even condemn white supremacy, even when his own FBI is talking about this being sourcing major parts of our problem. So we have a president who is responsible, who is not taking that responsibility and is doing nothing to address the deepening crisis in our country of this kind of violence. Okay, what can he do? You've outlined where he might not have the credibility with many Americans to do this, and obviously we're not going to get into whether he has the history of being able to somehow admit if he's wrong, or I don't want to get into that. Is there anything he can do in your mind that would at least begin a healing process here? So Chuck, it's not that he doesn't have the credibility. Please understand what I'm saying. I'm saying the president is contributing to what is going on right now. No, I understand. He is sowing seeds of hatred. Yeah, and so what can he do? There are two things that must be done. One is we need to deal with this issue of guns in our community, the ease of access, the fact that you can be on the terrorist no-fly list and you can go in and fill a trunk full of weapons at a gun show from a casual seller. We have a uniquely American problem because of the uniquely American phenomenon that anyone who wants to kill somebody can easily use a loophole to go out and find a weapon. As you said, I have the boldest plan, but my plan is actually based upon evidence. If you need a license to drive a car in this country, you should have a license to buy a gun and possess it. And we know that states that have done that have dramatically dropped the levels of violence. But the problem is we have a patchwork of these laws in our country. So as we saw in Gilroy, someone who can't get a gun in California, just shoot over to another state that has lax gun laws, buy your weapons, come in and do the carnage. So there are specific things we should be doing that are common sense. And again, the moral fabric of our nation. We have a country right now that is boiling over in hate. We have seen this before. My parents grew up in a generation that was trying to overcome lynchings and violence against African Americans, bombings of churches of little girls, and we came together, black and white, Christian, Jewish, and did something about this. But we have a president that is not only incapable of showing that kind of love, but he is stoking through his language hate. He is responsible for the crisis in our country and is doing nothing to actually solve it. It's unacceptable. There is one Republican that I know of calling this white terrorism. It's George P. Bush, who is a statewide office holder in the state of Texas. If the president doesn't accept the responsibility that you believe he has, what would you like the other elected Republicans to do? Well, to me, Martin Luther King said it so eloquently that what we have to repent for is not just the vitriolic words and violent actions of the bad people, but the appalling silence and inaction of the good people. There is a complicity in the president's hatred that undermines the goodness and the decency of Americans, regardless of what party. To say nothing in a time of rising hatred, it's not enough to say that I'm not a hate monger myself. If you are not actively working against hate, calling it out, you are complicit in what is going on. And so this is a moral moment in America, like we have seen before, where demagogues and fear-mongers and hate-mongers have risen. We need moral clarity and healing and love in our nation. We need leaders that are capable of doing that.
Senator Cory Booker, obviously we had booked you before these incidents. We were going to have a longer conversation about the campaign in general, but I appreciate you coming on and sharing your views on this, sir. Thanks very much.
Thank you.